Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing this vellum window thank you card showcasing lots of Simon Says Stamp products, but mostly focusing on this beautiful poppy bouquet stencil. And we're going to be inking it with a Distress Oxide ink on watercolor cardstock and then coloring over the top of it with some Karin BRUSHMARKER Pro markers and a water brush pen. I don't want my stencil to shift, so I've got my piece of cardstock here. This is Canson watercolor cardstock, trimmed to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I sprayed the back of my stencil with a little pixie spray, which is going to temporarily adhere it right where I want it to go. And then I'm going to take Distress Oxide ink and antique linen and apply this over the stencil, just all over. I purposely picked a nice light color. Antique linen is my go-to anyway, but something that will look nice under the orangish color that I'm going to use for my flowers. Because this is a water-based ink, it's going to work really great with my water-based markers. Then I am going to go in over top of each section, stenciled section, and I'm going to add a little water. I'm using a water brush pen. You can also use a paintbrush dipped in water. And then I'm just touching the tip of my Karin BRUSHMARKER Pro marker to that where I've added the water. And you can see that it immediately starts to kind of fan out to those areas where I've added the water, and then I'm blending out with my water brush pen. So I'm going to keep doing this. I'm not going to paint the whole thing on camera. I did leave probably 2/3 of it on camera, but it's repeating the same thing over and over. I am using only 3 markers to get this effect. It is so super easy and so pretty, and it gives you that watercolored look, that watercolored stenciled look really easily. I love laying down the water and then just touching that tip of the marker and watching the color fan out, and then you can always go in and blend out the petal the rest of the way. There's such a huge difference between the petals that I've already colored and then the ones that I have just done. What's funny to me is they look so different when wet, but as that water is absorbed and dries in the cardstock, the petals all just kind of even out beautifully, and you end up with this just really gorgeous design. We're going to continue this throughout all of the flowers. You could definitely do them in different colors if you want to. Darker colors, you can always go back and add another layer of color if you want to. Add more shading. I really went simple. We're creating a layered background here today. So the first layer is the inking and the watercolor. And then the second layer is going to be stamping a sentiment background stamp over the top of this, which is one of my all-time favorite looks for creating my own pattern papers, is kind of what I consider it, which I love to do. And then we're going to just layer on a nice little vellum window over the top and add a little die cutting of the panel to finish off the card so that you still get the majority of this beautiful panel. It definitely is the focal point of the card design, and I like to keep as much of it visible as possible. Look how pretty these are looking. I can't get over it, you guys. I had so much fun with this technique, and I cannot wait to take additional stencils. Can't even think of the word. Stencils and do this design. I have some really fun stuff coming up later next week. New release stuff that I cannot wait to share with you. all of these little parts and pieces. So the majority of the panel is going to be kind of this orangish red color, which I purposely picked for the poppies. And then I am going to use a nice green, it's called olive green, it is, for the stems. And then a little bit of cocoa for the center of my poppies for that nice brown color. The key to this background, and I'm using very, very little water, which does help. It's going to dry fast, but the key to this background is allowing the background to completely dry before you do any additional stamping or die cutting, whatever it might be. I let mine air dry probably for, gosh, I want to say an hour. A lot of times I will start a project like in the morning, and then, you know, we'll go do lunch or whatever it might be, and I'll come back later while whatever it is that I've applied is drying. I mean, sometimes it's glossy accents or Nuvo crystal drops, whatever it might be. I really love, whenever possible, if I'm not on a time crunch, to let things air dry. I think it's just a big difference. It is to me. I don't know that it is for everybody, but for me, it's just my personal preference. If you get a little too much water, don't be afraid to just dab it up. I used a microfiber cloth there to dab up mine. Okay, it has completely dried. We're ready to use the thank you background from Simon Says Stamp. There is also a really small like typewriter text thank you background that I love, and I have used that in many videos before. I will definitely link to that at the end of this video if you want to see some other ideas for stamp and stencil layering or stamp on stamp layering. But what I love is it has all kinds of different fonts of thank you. And I knew I wanted to use the Distress Oxide ink in Abandoned Coral, but I did not want it to be super harsh. So I have a scrap piece of paper in my Misty where I actually stamped it off, and that's like 3rd generation stamping. Well, 3rd generation stamping, while it looked good, it wasn't quite what I wanted. I knew I didn't want 1st generation stamping because it's super, super harsh. So I actually left my paper in the Misty, went back and inked it back up, stamped it off, and I'm going to use the 2nd generation stamping on top of that, and then just double check before I remove it to make sure that everything looks good. There were a couple little areas I added more ink and stamped it just to kind of fix it all up. Then we're going to go around the edges of the panel with our Abandoned Coral and an ink blending brush and add a little additional color. Keep in mind, we are going to die cut this panel and trim it down. So I didn't mind that there was a little bit of ink out there at the edges, a little bit more ink, because we're going to get rid of some of that. So it's just going to be a very, very soft little edge right around what we die cut. Next, I did die cut everything here off camera. This is the rounded alphabet small, basic rectangles, and the A2 thin frames. So basic rectangles and A2 thin frames work together, which is awesome. We're actually going to use that for the background panel as well. We're going to die cut our panel with a basic rectangle and then frame it up with an A2 thin frame. Kind of a frame within a frame, if you will. And I die cut the basic rectangle for the sentiment from Vellum, framed it up with gold. This is also going to serve as a fantastic place to hide our liquid adhesive back behind that little gold border. And then I added my own sentiment with these great little rounded alphabet dies. So these are fantastic. I've had these for quite a while, and I don't know that I know I haven't ever used them. They weren't cut apart, and I don't know why. They are the perfect size to create your own sentiment. So whatever that might be, you can create your own sentiment. And something else that I think is fantastic about these letters is that it's not a single die. They each die cut individually. What I'm thinking is, if you have a letterboard die set, which I know I have several from different companies, but a lot of the letterboard alphabet from those are all together, and so you have to die cut the whole thing a zillion times, I think these would work. I am going to try something, and I'll get back to you guys on that because I am really excited to try them for that. Next, I did die cut my background, so you can see it's got a nice white border all the way around, which I think is going to be just, I like that little white border. It just makes it a little bit more elegant, a little more finished. And then the gold cardstock here, this is some Tonic Studios mirror cardstock. I'm going to frame up the background panel with this nice little thin frame. It's exactly the same size as the panel. You guys know I love these little thin frames. They are my favorite. And then I did put that magnet on top of my letters while the liquid glue dried. And we're going to come back to that when we're done. Put a little liquid glue around the edge of our vellum window and pop it right into the center of this background. And it looks so beautiful. You can still see the watercoloring through the vellum window, but it makes the sentiment super legible. To finish this, we are going to take a sentiment from the Simon Says Stamp window frames stamp set. So I just basically went through my stamps to find something that would work with the word thanks. And I found For Everything from this stamp set. It's from a card kit from earlier this year from Simon Says Stamp. And the stamp set is still available for purchase. It's a great one, but I love that I could stamp the phrase For Everything. And I'm going to stamp that with clear embossing ink, heat emboss with Simon Says Stamp antique gold embossing powder. And then we are going to die cut this with a nested banners die. And I'm going to use the little notched ones. Another very classic, I'm using a lot of really good basics in this video, things that I'm sure you've seen me use over and over again because they are just phenomenal basics for your crafty stash. So I love the little banners. We're going to die cut that, and then we're going to pop up our phrase with a little foam adhesive right underneath the word thanks. So that's kind of how that's going to look. And then the last thing I'm going to do today is I am going to add a little heart here. This is the Trinity Stamps Coffee Bean Heart. So something else that I use a lot in my videos are little heart and star clay accents because I absolutely adore them. And here a couple months ago, I picked up these Trinity Stamps Coffee Bean colored ones. They're little brown ones. And I just have never used them. I can't believe that I've never used them. And it just works perfectly for this. I love how it kind of picks up the oranges and the golds and looks nice and finishes off our little sentiment rectangle. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this vellum window thanks card featuring Simon Says Stamp products. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says Stamp products that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.